Welcome to the Watermelon Winter, where like minded individuals come together to achieve the financial goals that we have set for ourselves. Today, January 19th, 2026, as we embark on this new year with our new year's resolutions, we're constantly learning more about finances and home economics and building wealth and achieving the goals that we have personally set out to achieve for our own finances. Your financial goals are personal to you. This is not a and it we're not giving you financial advice here. We're discussing principles and discussing considerations when it comes to handling money. And self-help, a lot of self-help, because this is important. Financial education really is not, required or provided in mainstream education. So today we're going to talk a little bit about a very important concept, which is time value, time value of money, or in other words, what is the what is the time value of money, and that money does have time value. Rather, money has time value. So what does that concept boil down? What does it mean? It means that the power of my dollar today is not going to have as much power to, tomorrow. In other words, right now, if I can take a dollar, right now, if I can take $10 and get an extra value meal, 10 years from now, if history is an accurate indicator of the future, 10 years from now, I will not be able to buy an extra value meal with that same $10. I will have to add more to it. So, therefore, if your earnings, and this is a sidebar, but if your earnings are not keeping up with the value of that money in the future, then you are going to struggle financially. So, one way to hedge against this phenomenon, which is they call it inflation. One way to hedge against inflation is to make sure that your money is growing and compounding at a rate that you can live with, that keeps up with inflation. You want to be earning compound interest so that the money that you do save, you wanted to have the same or more buying power when you are ready to sell that asset, sell that investment. So the fact that money has time value is a very important concept. Um, and again, you know, what I am able to do with my dollar tomorrow or my dollar in 5 years is going to be drastically different from what I'm able to do with my dollar right now. And sometimes we have calculations, things that we want to figure out because again, as a watermelon winner, we have an obligation before we enter into any transaction, whether it's investment or not. We have an obligation to go back to our office, get all of the variables that are required that we need to answer some sort of questions, to specific type of questions rather. We do the math, we come up with the answer, and that number is what's going to drive our decisions. And certainly, knowing how to calculate the time value of money, whether it's the future value, whether it's the present value, understanding how those concepts work makes for a much more intelligent investor. I mean, it makes you so much more conscious of your investing. So let's take a look at some of these concepts here. So money has time value. What money has time value? We just talked about what that means. Some of the key concepts of time has money value include present value, meaning the value of the money today, future value, meaning the value of money in the future, Interest, which is represented as an R, interest rate per period, which can be designated as or defined as months or days or years or decades, I guess. N, the number of periods. So if you're going to do it annually and there's 12 months, this would be represented as the number of pyramids, which would be 12. Periodic payment, that's for an annuity. If we wanted to calculate the present value of an annuity that's expected to maybe go on for the next 40 years or 50 years or whatever it is, you would want to know what the periodic payments are for the annuity, and you would want to know the future value and the present value of those annuity payments. Future value. Let's talk about the future value. We let's get into the future value rather. We've already did the math. We already understand what the future value is. It is the value of money in the future. So here's a typical general question. How much money today will be worth tomorrow? And again, how much will money today be worth in the future, tomorrow? So why are we asking this question? When will we ask this question? Well, we would probably want to ask this question. We probably will see this question or deal with it in real life when you are dealing with an investment decision, right? You're dealing with an investment decision and you want to decide how much your money, the money that you're thinking of investing, what is the future value of that, right? So the question is, how much will my money today be worth in the future? So we want to know how much my $100 bill, today, how much is it worth in say 10 years, right? So the formula here is future value equals the present value, which we know what that is, multiplied by 1, which equals R, which is the interest rate per period, to the nth number of periods. So this formula, we're using this when we want to know how much an investment will be worth in the future. This is what so in other words, we want to know how much this investment, how much this asset, how much this is going to be worth in the future. Because if we know that, then we'll be able to better decide, whether we're going to keep the asset, whether we're going to sell the asset. We can then begin to plan, for rolling the asset over, or perhaps just selling the asset. It just is so helpful to understand what the future value of something is. It could be as simple as buying or selling a business. You know how much your business is worth now. You know what the periodic payments are, and you know how many periods that we're talking about. So you may want to find out what the future value is. What is this business going to be worth 10 years from now? Because again, if I can figure that math out, now I may be able to compare two different types of investments and decide which one is best. So let's look at this example that we have here. So let's say, for example, you invest $1,000 at 5% rate of return for a period of 3 years. So you invest 1,000 at 5% rate of return for 3 years. This is a pretty simple example, right? $1,000, 5% for 3 years. So what is the future value of this investment? You got the 1,000 multiplied by the 0.05%. plus the 1, so that would be 1.05 to the nth, which is 3, because n represents the number of periods. And if you do the math on that, it's inside of parentheses to the third, multiply times that 1,000. We're looking at $1,157.63. So the future value of this $1,000 investment over the period of 3 years amounts to $1,157.63, which is pretty good, right? Your $1,000 that you invested now, by letting it stay there for 3 years, now it then, or it may not be years, it could be 3 months, it could be 3 whatever periods, however you want to define it. It doesn't have to be a 3-year total. I know a lot of you probably thinking, well, I don't know if I want to wait 3 years to make $157. So I get it. But that number of periods could potentially be months, could be any, level of periods. So then you have another thing that you may need to calculate, which would be the present value. How much is something currently worth today? What is the future amount worth today, rather? We know this is when we know what something is going to be worth in the future. We know this. We know it's going to be worth whatever, 100,000 in the future. We know this. And we want to know what's the value of that today, how much the value is today. So an example of a question that, and we have one here, but a more practical use of this present value is when deciding whether to buy a business. If you're looking at buying a business and you have all of the forecasted, earnings, and there's a good history of earnings and it can be forecasted with a level of certainty, then if someone were to want to sell that business, they would want to use this formula to come up with, how much should I even pay for this business that I'm buying right here? How much should I pay for it? And the formula is pretty straightforward. The present value equals the future value divided by 1 plus the number of periods to the nth, the number of periods. So what we're talking about is how many years or how many periods or how many months we're actually talking about. So let's take a look at this example. Say, for example, we have you, for example, that you're going to receive 1,500 in 4 years at 5%. So we want to know how much it's worth right now. How much is that 1,500 worth right now? You're going to get 1,500 in 4 years, and you got an interest rate of 6%. Okay, so how much is all of that worth right now? Well, let's find out. So the present value is going to be the 1,500, which is the future value, divided by the 1 plus the periodic value, which is 0.06, to the nth, which is 4. Nth being represented as the number of periods. So do the math on this. We come up with $1,188.49, which your money grew over this period of time. You're going to have some people out there that says, oh, that's all. And it's just, this is the reality of investing. Anyone tells you anything other than this, it's probably someone selling you dreams, because you have to do the math. The math sometimes doesn't look like what we wanted to look. But when we do the math, we're always accepting it as the facts. Math is the probably one of the best ways to get to the facts. Using math, we can get down to the truth, to the facts. Because you can make inferences, very good inferences, based on math and which are facts. So annuities. We're not going to deal with annuities today. They're really just, these are the types of uh, calculations you would make when there's someone who's getting a series of payments over a period of time and they want a lump sum. And so they're trying to figure out how much the present value of these periods that are going to pass over time. They may have a yearly annuity of say 20,000 because of an accident that they were in. And that's supposed to go on in perpetuity. But they instead want a lump sum payment because there's something they want to go and do. Well, they would use this formula here, which would be the present value of an annuity, which would be the present value divided by the payments, multiplied by 1 minus the 1 times the rate to the nth, all divided by R. And that then tells you the present value of these annuities, right? You want to know the present value so you can cash in and take the early lump sum if this makes sense to you, right? And then you get into a little bit more sophisticated um, calculations, which is compound frequency, which is just another way of considering additional information and calculating the future value of an investment that is occurring over a period of time. And that really is, in a nutshell, the basics when it comes to time value of money. Again, just to recap, uh, time value is the idea that money that is spent and transacted today is not going to have the same power tomorrow. And likewise, money that will have a certain value in the future is going to have a different value today than it will in the future. Because history tells us that due to inflation, the same dollar just doesn't have the power it once did. That is why investing is so popular, because it is a way to hedge against, to compete with, and to survive when there's inflation. That will always happen. There will always be situations where products and services are increasing in price, but your income doesn't always keep up with that. And that's why there was so much sort of controversy with the economy here in the United States, because people were finding it difficult to pay for normal things like groceries or a car or a pair of shoes and things of that nature, or housing. Things have gotten so expensive and people are trying to work against that. But having investments that are earning compound interest, where the amount that you're contributing to this stays stationary, so you're doing it over a period of time, and those investments and the amount of money you're putting in there continues to compound over time. But the reality is, it's not an overnight thing. It's not going to be a 5-year thing or even a 6 or 7 year thing. You could leave it there for 7 years and make some contributions. It's not going to be much. However, it's pretty well known that for certain types of investments, over time they will grow. There are some investments, and you can look out there. There are some investments that are pretty certain. They have a proven track record, and the future can be expected to be what the past was, literally. And these tend to be investments that offer a lower rate of return because they're not as risky And then you have other investments that are going to be extremely risky, but the rate of return is great, 100%, 200% rate of return. And you just never know. Some things pop up like that, but by and large, people don't like a lot of risk, you know. So it's a thing that people have to decide for themselves. But that's the concept of the time value, the money, the concept that money has time value, and really that there's an idea out there and a concept out there that informs us of this. We should always consider this when we're going in and out of investments. How much time do I have to hold on to this investment? How much time do I have that I can go without this money to let it snowball and to grow? Knowing that will give us more information, making better decisions. We can decide if we want to buy or sell. And this is all important to our financial health. I want to thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video. It's always a pleasure. This is the Watermelon Winner. We will see the abundance, financial freedom, and success in life together. If you have some information that you want to share, if you found something that I said to be inaccurate, please chime in. We are all here together. And thank you again for stopping by. Catch you the next time. Peace.